Hello and welcome to the Joseph Early Show. We have a great show for you tonight. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump in on a press conference with Kayleigh McEnany. Man, this lady is a pit bull. She can really rip it up and explain the facts very quickly. And I really appreciate watching her. I really enjoyed the press when they try to oppose her, because she is ruthless in dealing with the press. Now, we also have some great information about Fox News. Their ratings have tanked, and I've been telling you for months that Fox News is not fair and balanced by any stretch of the imagination. And we're going to show you some things that Fox has done. You know, the morning program, the title of it was CNN Busted. Well, I think we've just busted Fox News as well. Anyway, let's go right into this press conference.
Efforts at sunlight and transparency because you have nothing to hide. You take these positions and you are welcoming illegal voting. Our position is clear. We want to protect the franchise of the American people. We want an honest, accurate, lawful count. We want maximum sunlight. We want maximum transparency. We want every legal vote to be counted, and we want every illegal vote to be discarded. Unlike our opponents, we have nothing to hide. The integrity of our election matters. The Constitution of the United States matters. What we have seen across the country is Democrat officials systematically trying to do an end run around the Constitution to tip the scales of the election in their favor. As Justice Gorsuch wrote in DNC versus Wisconsin State Legislature, our oath to uphold the Constitution is tested by hard times, not easy ones. Last-minute changes to long-standing election rules risk other problems too, inviting confusion and chaos and eroding public confidence in electoral outcomes. Pennsylvania is a case study in just this. Allow me to just broadly review 3 points that have happened in Pennsylvania. Number one, in Philadelphia, poll watchers who are legally permitted to be there and observe the vote count were blocked from observing the count. Our poll watchers were put behind barricades in a massive room. They were many feet from the counting process, and in fact, when you look at all of the tables, many hundreds of feet, in fact, from the tables in the very back. They were completely in the dark, completely unable to oversee the vote count, as was their legal right. An observer on the scene described it this way. Imagine being on a football field. You're on the 10-yard line and expected to make a call in the end zone on the other side of the field. It is unacceptable. An intermediary court ruled on the side of the campaign, on the side of transparency and allowing the poll watchers to observe the count. But what did the Democrat Pennsylvania Supreme Court do? They issued an administrative stay, effectively pushing back our poll watchers and denying them the access they deserve to sit and watch the count. Ask yourself this: what are Pennsylvania Democrats hiding? Why can't poll watchers simply observe the count? Second, Article 1, Section 4 of the United States Constitution clearly states this: the time, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. That's right, the state legislature is constitutionally the one making the decision. But the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Kathy Boockvar, and the Democrat-tilted Pennsylvania Supreme Court have continually disregarded the Constitution, making decisions clearly in the domain of the Pennsylvania legislator. In fact, maybe there's a reason the Secretary of State, Boockvar, keeps substituting her will for that of the legislature in a completely unconstitutional fashion. Perhaps it's because she has motive. In fact, she has shown her partisan hatred tweeting this: using the title, quote, president before the word, quote, Trump really just means the office of the presidency. We see where her motives stand. And finally, a mere survey of the facts shows that voters in blue counties like Philadelphia County were given certain privileges that voters in red counties were not afforded. The Constitution's Equal Protection Clause requires uniform standards, but Democrat election officials created disparities depending on where citizens lived and where they voted in the state. Some counties set up satellite offices for backdoor early voting, whereas other counties did not. Some counties allowed pre-canvassing, where other counties did not. Voters in some counties were allowed to cure their ballots, whereas voters in other counties were not. What Pennsylvania has done is provide a case study into how to tip the scales of an election to functionally favor the Democrat Party. This has gone on nationwide. And I'll leave you with this. In DNC versus Wisconsin State Legislature, in another attempt to count late ballots that arrived after the election, Justice Gorsuch wrote, "Nothing in our founding document contemplates the kind of judicial intervention that took place here, nor is there precedent for it in 230 years of the court's decisions." He went on to say, "No one doubts that conducting a national election amid a pandemic poses serious challenges. But none of that means individual judges may improvise with their own election rules in place of those the people's representatives have adopted." They have taken a global pandemic and turned it into a nationwide electoral epidemic. They have taken, based on what they call a natural disaster, they have used that and turned this into a national disaster. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt Morgan, General Counsel for the campaign.
Thank you, Kayleigh. As Kayleigh stated, the election is not over. Tabulation and canvassing continues across the United States. And today in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, the Donald J. Trump for president and 2 representative voters filed suit against the Secretary of State in select counties, alleging 2 things. Number 1, a violation of equal access based on a lack of meaningful observation and transparency, particularly in Democrat-controlled counties. And secondly, a violation of equal protection based on disparate treatment between Republican voters and Democrat voters. But what does this mean in layman's terms? What does this mean for all of you? What this means is if you are a Democrat in Philadelphia, you are allowed to work outside the bounds of the restrictions on fixing defective ballots, sometimes referred to as voting. But if you're in Republican counties in the state of Pennsylvania, you are not allowed to do that because they're strictly following the text of the statute in Pennsylvania. Secondly, if you are a Republican in the city of Philadelphia, for example, you are not allowed meaningful access to the observation of the vote tabulation process. If you're a Democrat in a Republican-leaning county in the state of Pennsylvania, you were allowed that access to meaningfully view the ballots as they're being counted. There are, in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties, there were over 682,000 ballots that were tabulated outside the view of our observers who are entitled by law to review those ballots. And we believe that a meaningful review of those ballots could discern that there were ballots that were illegally counted. Our relief that we're seeking at this point is to enjoin the Secretary of State from hurrying to certify the results before they were completely tabulated or canvassed so that we can obtain that meaningful review and discern within those 682,000 ballots at least, and there may be more throughout the state, whether or not there is disparate treatment for Republican voters and Democrat voters in the states, and whether Democrat voters were disproportionately allowed to cure or fix their ballots in some locations in the state and not others. And for example, even at a minute level here today, we are very close to the automatic recount statute in Pennsylvania, and this lawsuit itself could change that or swing that small discrepancy. So this is the relief we're seeking at this time, but I would also urge the press and those out there that this is step 1 of a process. We are within our rights to look into these irregularities. We were in our rights to observe the votes as they are being tabulated. We will observe those, and we believe that this lawsuit takes us one step closer to closing the gap in the vote differential in Pennsylvania. And at this time, I'll turn over to the Republican chairwoman, Ms. McDaniel.
Thank you all for coming. I'm going to start with some of the irregularities we've seen in the state of Michigan specifically, and then I'll go a little bit broader. But Michigan is my home state, and in the county, Wayne County, Republican poll watchers were denied their legal right to monitor the election and purposely kept in the dark. Both literally and figuratively, poll watchers or election workers blocked windows and padlocked doors. Obviously, that's not going to instill confidence. There are thousands of reports of poll watchers being intimidated and unable to do their job. And as of 4 p.m. this afternoon, 131 affidavits have been completed just in Michigan, with over 2,800 incident reports that have been submitted to us since Election Day. 2 new lawsuits were filed today by people who were working in Detroit, and a whistleblower who has gotten their information. We have gotten their information to the Eastern District Court of Michigan. As you guys can understand, with 2,800 incident reports, this is a lot to track down. It means we're interviewing these people, we're getting their statements, and we're turning them into affidavits. But that takes a lot of time and effort. And as Matt has mentioned, there's a canvass process and a certification for a reason. But I will just tell you the distress that I'm hearing in my state from people who were at TCF and the way they were treated is deeply alarming. I hope you go and look at this. I hope you look at these affidavits, and I hope you hear from the people that were there who feel like they were denied transparency and saw wrongdoing in Detroit. We should all be alarmed by this, no matter where you are on the political spectrum. In addition to that, we've heard hundreds of instances of election workers who were verbally accosted. They verbally accosted our poll watchers and refusals to let them challenge questionable ballots. Election workers were wearing Biden T-shirts and applauding when our poll watchers were kicked out. Imagine volunteering and going and spending your night because you care so much about the integrity of the election, and then to be kicked out and to be cheered as you are leaving. This does not instill confidence in our democracy, and these are good people. I know most of these people. Of the few ballots that Democrat election workers did allow us to challenge, our observers say those ballots were then moved back into the regular pile after our poll watchers were intimidated and pushed from the process. There is a canvass for a reason. There is a certification process for a reason. And unlike Election Day, we need these processes to be transparent. Already in Detroit, we are hearing incidents, and we will have affidavits to this effect, of people not being able to meaningfully canvass and discrepancies that we're seeing in Detroit specifically. So just after a week after the polls closed, Democrats and the media want to ignore these clear irregularities and rush to call states as one and end the certification and canvass process. We're hearing we need to unite, we need to come together. Well, for the thousands of people who spent time and hours going out to be part of this process, who feel disenfranchised, who don't feel like there was transparency, we can't do that unless we search out all these irregularities. Even one instance of voter fraud should be too many for all of us. We intend to ensure that every lawful voter has their vote counted in accordance with the law, that observers are granted the access they are due under state law, and that any irregularities that have occurred, whether by malicious intent or incompetence, are investigated to the fullest extent allowed under the law. We will not give up on this process until every last issue has been uncovered. The RNC has deployed legal teams in multiple states to investigate clear irregularities with voting, counting, and tabulation, and we will work with state and local authorities to ensure that a legal count is conducted in accordance to each state's laws and that every vote is counted. If the shoe were on the other foot, if it were this close the other way, if President Trump was in the lead in all these states, and the media would be screaming, this isn't over, the race isn't over, we need more time to count and make sure it's right. But because it's Biden and a very slight lead, the media demands the race is over and there's nothing to see here. The American people need to have confidence in their elections. There are over 150 Americans who voted in this election, and they deserve to know that their votes were counted accurately. Right now, and I can say this as I'm hearing calls and hearing from people across the country, they do not have confidence that that happened. So I am asking the media, interview these people, talk to these people. Do not just dismiss these allegations out of hand, these irregularities. Go research it, because this is a problem when people are not being able to transparently watch the election counting, which they are legally allowed to do. It creates division in our country. Republican and be allowed to observe this process, but in this case, it's Republicans that we're not allowed to. We will continue to fight. President Trump will continue to fight for us, and we'll continue to fight for him. Please go to visit.gop. Please visit GOP.com to donate, and if you see signs of voter irregularity, go to 888-503-3526. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions. Yep.
Kayleigh, sounds like, do you know that fraudulent votes were actually cast? Or are you simply saying we don't know because we couldn't see it?
Look, what we are asking for here is patience. Rana just mentioned to you the more than, I believe it was 130 affidavits in Michigan alone. We're aware of all the reports of thousands of votes in Nevada that were cast by those who are not eligible. We're hearing these reports. We're seeing them come in. We are vetting them. We are getting affidavits. So right now we would point you to all of that. That information is publicly available. But what we're asking for right now is patience as we explore these equal protection claims, among others.
So can I add that? Let me just add a couple things in this recent lawsuit. One, we do have a whistleblower, which I discussed earlier this week, who was in Detroit as an election worker, not as a Republican poll watcher, who under affidavit says that they were told to backdate ballots, that their supervisor came and they were there on November 4th. Ballots that came in with no date, they were told by the supervisor, backdate the ballots to November 2nd or November 3rd so they will count. So that has been submitted to the to the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Michigan. That is via affidavit. If you look at the recent lawsuit, and Mike Reed can get you the information on this lawsuit, let me just share. An election employee with the City of Detroit working at a polling location for 3 weeks prior to the election. This City of Detroit employee directly observed on a daily basis other City of Detroit election workers and employees coaching voters to vote for Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. This employee witnessed these workers and employees encouraging voters to do straight Democrat ballot and witnessed these election workers and employees going over to the voting booths with voters in order to watch them vote and coach them who to vote for. During the last 2 weeks, while this same employee was working at the polling location, she was specifically instructed by her supervisors never to ask for a driver's license or any photo ID when a person was trying to vote. And as absentee ballots that existed all absentee ballots that existed were required to be input into the QVF system by 9 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. This was required to be done in order to have a final list of absentee voters who returned their ballots prior to 8 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. In order to have enough time to process the absentee ballots, all polling locations were instructed to collect the absentee ballots from the drop box once every hour on November 3rd. On November 4th, 2020, a City of Detroit election worker was instructed to improperly predate the absentee ballots receive date and that were not in the QVF. She was told to alter the information in the QVF to falsely show that the absentee had been received in time to be valid. The election employee also observed a large number of people who came into the satellite location to vote in person, but they had already applied for an absentee ballot. These people were allowed to vote in person and were not required to return the mailed absentee ballot or sign an affidavit that the voter lost the mailed ballot. Listen, here's the thing. Why aren't you worried about these irregularities? But no, this is a separate question. But it's a separate question, which is, if you are finding these irregularities, if you have an election worker being told to backdate ballots, that's a problem. We're going to pursue all of this. Is it going to be enough? No, it's going to take time. Is it going to be enough? We don't know. Is it going to take time? Yes, it's going to take time. But what we are seeing is deeply alarming. Along with the software situation we had in Antrim County, which we need to get to the bottom of as well. Now we have a whistleblower, and now we have 131 affidavits talking about irregularities and problems that were happening in Detroit. That's just Michigan.
Can you share the name of the poll worker?
You can look at this lawsuit.
Can you share the name of the poll worker?
Mike, can you get them the lawsuit? We'll get that out to you. I don't know if that person's name, it may be a whistleblower, so they may be provided protections.
Do you have any evidence that you can show us today that shows that illegal votes were cast?
Well, I think I just went through that with you. With somebody backdating ballots, that's called illegal. If you are changing the date on a ballot, an election worker, a whistleblower, well, how would we have to subpoena that and we'll have to get that information, but that's going to be an investigation process. But somebody was told, you need to backdate ballots to make them legal, ballots that were illegal under the law.
How is there this big conspiracy theory against, or conspiracy against, how is there this big conspiracy against red counties and Republican voters, but the GOP picked up House seats? How are some Republicans okay?
I don't think listen, how is it a conspiracy when a whistleblower from the City of Detroit is saying, I was told by my supervisors to lie and backdate ballots? This is somebody protected under the law. There's no conspiracy there, Matt, if you want to confirm.
Well, I can answer at least regarding the lawsuit today in Pennsylvania.
Well, the question is about the Republican Party picking up seats.
No, but I'm saying, you're talking about how the disparate treatment. So, for example, in the city of Philadelphia, if you do not provide an inner secrecy envelope with your ballot as you return it, that is not supposed to count. But what we know is happening in Philadelphia is somehow the city of Philadelphia knew which ballots had inner secrecy envelopes and did not, and we're telling voters ahead of time, hey, you may not have included your inner secrecy envelope. You need to get in here and vote a provisional ballot and get that fixed. But that was only happening in Philadelphia, but that was not happening in the rest of the state because the state law discourages that. So as Democrats were disproportionately voting by mail, they were disproportionately picking up those added votes in the city of Philadelphia.
Let me say one final thing. There were 682,479 ballots counted in Philadelphia, in Allegheny County, that there were no poll watchers allowed to watch. It's the job of the media to ask the question why, because all we are asking for is truth, transparency, and sunlight here. That is all we are asking for, and sadly we are asking the questions many of you should.
Bam! There you go right there. I mean, that's exactly what the press is supposed to do. But see, the press, the mainstream media, as well as some other press, they've been overtaken by the communist Chinese and the communist in other places in order to subvert and hoodwink the American people. Again, guys, this is Operation Mockingbird all over again. And it's been continuing and continuing and continuing ever since Operation Mockingbird was established. You have to realize that you are the mark. The American people are the mark. We wrote in our book in 2018 about being feed, fined, and fornicated by the administration. And that's exactly what has happened over the several decades. They have done nothing but fee, fine, and fornicate the American people. And enough's enough. It's finally all coming to light. Everything in this COVID-19 hoax is all started to expose different groups. Now, listen, the mainstream media, we already knew about. The alt media, we weren't that sure. They were kind of, well, there's a little, it's kind of a gray area here. So now there's even a more clear separation in the media. And Fox News, as I said earlier, their ratings are tanking, almost like CNN. CNN is horrible on their ratings. And I predict you're going to see some guys from Fox News jump ship. Tucker Carlson and a couple of other guys, because Fox is going down. So let's continue this report because they get into Pfizer. Now, it just so happens that Pfizer releases what they did at the time that they have. Well, let's just go ahead into the next clip. Guys, roll that clip.
The media seems to be downplaying President Trump's role in the development of COVID vaccines and the candidates to become vaccinations. Today, the New York Times and the Washington Post claimed drug maker Pfizer denied taking money from the Trump administration to develop the vaccine.
No. See, we're the New York Times and Washington Post, and don't pay attention to what Pfizer actually says. Listen to us. I mean, like they're the authority. I mean, this is unbelievable. One would even say ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous. Their goal is to totally lie to you. I mean, it's amazing. And people go back to the trough day in, day out, and they're lying to you. How do you feel about that? You want to keep watching them? Keep supporting them? Yeah. Back to the clip. Roll it.
However, Pfizer itself says its vaccine was made possible due to a $2 billion partnership with the Trump campaign, or the Trump administration rather, as part of Operation Warp Speed. The Pentagon has confirmed Pfizer's participation in Operation Warp Speed. President Trump reached that agreement with Pfizer back in July.
Today, my administration reached a historic agreement with Pfizer to produce and deliver 100 million doses of their vaccine immediately following its approval. Hopefully the approval process will go very quickly, and we think we have a winner there. We also think we have other companies right behind that are doing very well in the vaccines.
Pfizer says its vaccine has shown 90% efficacy in preventing coronavirus infections. The company adds the vaccine will be released and distributed in partnership with the Pentagon by the end of this year. Now, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is seeking to stop the Trump administration from using and issuing a COVID vaccine distribution plan once it becomes available. The Democrat governor says he wants to either fix or stop the rollout plan before it ensues, claiming that it's an effort to prevent damage. Now, he then went on to claim he's already speaking with other U.S. governors to take action.
And we can't let this vaccination plan go forward the way the Trump administration is designing it, because Biden can't undo it 2 months later. We'll be in the midst of it. And I've been talking to governors across the nation about that. How can we shape the Trump administration vaccine plan to fix it or stop it before it does damage?
Yeah, now here's Andrew Cuomo. I mean, the big nursing home murderer. This guy, come on. Anything that Trump does, Cuomo's going to object to. They're going to give out this vaccine, and Cuomo doesn't want to do that. Why? Because when Biden comes in, okay, Cuomo, you're delusional. You're absolutely delusional. Biden is not going to get in the presidency. Period. This whole thing is rigged. This whole COVID-19 is a fraud, and we're going to see it. The American people are going to see it, and they're going to see what you traitors have done. You've committed treason. You've broken your oath of office. You can't even be there because you've broken your oath of office.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration has yet to announce plans for their vaccine rollouts. The CEO of Pfizer Pharmaceuticals confirms the company's coronavirus vaccine will be free for all Americans. In an interview today, Albert Bourla said Pfizer is providing the vaccine to the government for a very low price, which makes it possible for Americans to get access for free. Now, as part of the Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed, the U.S. signed a nearly $2 billion agreement with Pfizer and BioNTech, the company out of the Pacific Northwest, in July for up to 600 million doses of their vaccine candidate. Bourla touted the success of that vaccine after the company revealed their studies show that it's 90% effective against COVID.
And now, this message from your local drug dealer. Take it away.
90% is a game changer. 90%, now you are hoping to have a tool in your war against this pandemic that could be significantly effective.
The news of Pfizer's vaccine success sent the stock market soaring. In a tweet, the president touted the jump on Wall Street and the potential of a vaccine being approved soon. Here's Edward Baran.
Pharmaceutical giant Pfizer says that its experimental coronavirus vaccine is more than 90% effective. That's based on initial data from a large study. It would mark a major victory in the fight against a pandemic that's killed over 1 million people, roiled the world's economy, and upended daily life. Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech are the first drug makers to show successful data from a large-scale clinical trial of a coronavirus vaccine. The companies say they've so far found no serious safety concerns and expect to seek authorization for emergency use in the United States later this month. If authorized, the number of vaccine doses will initially be limited. Many questions also remain, including how long the vaccine will provide protection. However, the news provides hope that other vaccines in development against the novel coronavirus may also prove effective. Pfizer said the interim analysis was conducted after 94 participants in the trial developed COVID-19, examining how many of them received the vaccine versus a placebo. The data have yet to be peer-reviewed or published in a medical journal. Pfizer said it would do so once it has results from the entire trial. Pfizer and BioNTech have a $1.95 billion contract with the US government to deliver 100 million vaccine doses beginning this year. They've also reached supply agreements with the European Union, the UK, Canada and Japan.
Meanwhile, the FDA grants fast-track designation to Novavax's potential coronavirus vaccine. That designation was handed down to the company today. Novavax's president of research and development, Gregory Glenn, says today that the FDA's decision, quote, reflects the urgent need for a safe and effective vaccine to prevent COVID. Now, Glenn added that while the process has been sped up, Novavax remains committed to making sure the vaccine meets its standards for safety and efficacy. All right, well, it's all hands.
Unbelievable, guys. I tell you what, if you're going to take a vaccine, you really need to do your research on this vaccine thing. I mean, seriously, do your research. I would tell you, now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an Indian chief, but a guy that has done as much research as we've done, don't take the vaccine. Trust me, do your own research. Do your own research. Let's get into the next clip. Gateway Pundit. Huge breaking news. Georgia, 132,000 ballots in Fulton County, Georgia, have been identified, which are likely ineligible. Well, imagine that. How in the world could that happen? Well, let's just look inside and see. Huge news tonight. There are roughly 132,000 change of address flags in Fulton County, Georgia ballots. These ballots are likely ineligible. Kyle Becker and People's Pundit on Twitter announced moments ago that 132,000 ballots in Fulton County, Georgia are likely ineligible. Biden leads Georgia by 10,000 votes as of last update. It's enough to be a game changer. Well, let's see, breaking from the text, let's see if this is going to be a game changer. And you see there on the screen, Joe Biden 49.5 and President Donald Trump 49.3. Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you this is going to happen this way all over the country. And this nonsense, and the staff and I were looking for a better word than nonsense. Bravo Sierra, overused. Bovine feces, maybe not really necessary, meaning the same thing. If these ballots are deemed ineligible, the state of Georgia is almost certainly won by President Trump. And this is before the illegal voter harvesting in recent days is addressed. Well, this is just one of those quick slaps. All right. So that is Gateway Pundit. Let's see what else we have on Gateway Pundit. Oh, Ohio Attorney General asked U.S. Supreme Court to overturn ruling that extended deadlines for mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. That is from 2:43 p.m. this afternoon, November 9th. There is the Ohio Attorney General, Dave Yost. President Trump's legal team is preparing to ask the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn an unconstitutional ruling from Pennsylvania's Supreme Court that ordered election officials to count mail-in ballots that arrived 3 days after Election Day. Break from the text. Again, guys, this was the whole concept behind the COVID-19 that is starting to backfire. COVID-19 has done nothing but agitated, irritated the American people. Now, a lot of people have gone along with this, but for the most part, you have a lot of closet belligerents that are irritated behind COVID-19 that is that's really been a pain to have to deal with. But when the American people find out what a fraud and a hoax that was, early on, I got a lot of grief about saying this thing was a hoax and a fraud from the beginning, back during the summer. And I started to watch this thing as it developed, and I thought, I just smell a rat. I smell a big fat rat. There's another reason for this COVID-19, and that really caused us to change gears in what we were doing with our different businesses, and just to set those aside for a little bit, find other people to deal with them so we could step out and come do this. Because America is looking for a news team that they can receive the news from that's going to tell them the truth as far as what's going on. And in order to tell you the truth, you must know the backstory. You've got to know the history in order to read between the lines on these things. And history is something that I really enjoy. So anyway, back to the text on this. The Pennsylvania State Legislature decided Election Day ends at 8 p.m. on election night. Rogue Democratic PA Governor Wolf circumvented the state legislature and took the fight to the state Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court created law out of thin air and extended the deadline for mail-in ballots November 6th. Now, guys, let me explain something about the Supreme Court. And most people really don't understand how this works. The Supreme Court does not make law. All they can do is issue an opinion of law to tell Congress, we believe in our legal opinion, not law, in our legal opinion, that this particular code, statute, ordinance, rule could be unconstitutional. In other words, the government can't do this. Then it goes back to Congress, and they need to do something about it. And if they do nothing about it, then what the Supreme Court has written goes into effect. Well, knowing Congress, doing nothing, you have progress and then you have Congress. And that's exactly what Congress does. Nothing, or regresses. So, anyway, people are under the assumption that the Supreme Court makes law, and they don't. Well, in today's American politics, public officials are going to feel the sting and pinch of the pitchfork hitting them in the backside when they're not moving by the American people, because that's what COVID-19 did. COVID-19 woke up the American people. They're never going to go through this again. And if this takes throwing a lot of people out of office, including Republicans, because I don't want to give them a pass at all, because a lot of them have gone along with the globalist plan. All right. Back to the text. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court created law out of thin air and extended the deadline for mail-in ballots to November 6th. And of course, they can't do that. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost filed a brief on Monday in support of the Republican state lawmaker who have asked the U.S. Supreme Court to throw out post-election date ballots. PA Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman and House Speaker Brian Cutler on Friday said under Pennsylvania law, the ballot must be in by 8 p.m. on election night in order to be counted. Cleveland.com reported. Ohio Attorney General David Yost has asked U.S. Supreme Court to overturn the ruling from Pennsylvania Supreme Court that ordered election officials there to continue accepting absentee ballots that arrived within the 3 days following Election Day. In a Monday filing, state attorneys said U.S. Supreme Court justice should overturn the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision, arguing state legislature, not state courts, set the rules for picking presidential electors. Well, that's exactly right. At least, the filing says, the U.S. Supreme Court should weigh in on whether the Pennsylvania court's ruling was proper. The states need an answer to that question, which is certain to arise again in future elections. And it is important to provide that answer now because without a ruling from this court, doubts will continue to linger about whether the vote count in Pennsylvania was performed in conformity with the Constitution. Gee, break from the text. What's that word? The Constitution. See, the Luciferians don't know anything necessarily about the Constitution. They're all hung up with the Administrative Procedure Act from 1946, which tried to circumvent the Constitution. Part of the Communist Manifesto and the Communist Bar Associations, the Lawyers Guild. Back to the text. Reads the filing signed by Ohio Solicitor General Benjamin Flowers and Chief Deputy Solicitor General Michael Hendershot. Former Special Prosecutor Ken Starr said the PA legislature is the boss, and counting ballots that came in after Election Day could be a federal crime as well as a state crime. So, of course, let's go to this tape from Mike Levin and, of course, Ken Starr.
The approach. We want the legislatures, those closest to the people, the state legislatures, they're the bosses, not the governor. And what happened in Pennsylvania over these recent weeks is a constitutional travesty. Governor Wolf tries to get his reforms, his vision, as he was entitled to do, through the legislature of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He failed. He then goes to the state Supreme Court, which by a divided vote accepted the substance of what Governor Wolf was doing and then added their own nooks and crannies as well. Happily, in recent days, we've seen Justice Samuel Alito step in as a single justice. He has the power to do it. And essentially, in a very short order, say the legislature is the boss. What the governor did, this is my interpretation, is utterly unconstitutional. What the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did is utterly unconstitutional. It's just clear as the words that you just read.
U.S. Supreme Court Justice Alito on Friday night ordered that any ballots received after 8 p.m. on Election Day in Pennsylvania be separated and secured and counted separately. Break from the text. But that didn't stop CNN. That didn't stop MSLSD. That didn't stop ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox News from calling the election. Back to the text. Alito ordered neither the applicant, PA GOP, nor the secretary has been able to verify that all boards are complying with the secretary's guidance, which, it is alleged, is not legally binding on them. The corrupt Democratic machine in Pennsylvania is brazenly stealing the election from President Trump. Break from the text. Let me correct that. Trying to. They're not going to do it. Because what they've done is completely and absolutely illegal. It's not going to work. Back to the text. Pennsylvania officials have produced over 1 million ballots, all in favor of Joe Biden, since the morning after the election. Trump was ahead of Biden on election night in Pennsylvania by nearly 700,000 votes, but Democrats had chipped away at Trump's lead with voter fraud. GOP poll watchers are also being barred from entering vote counting centers, or they're being forced to observe the ballot counting from far away with binoculars. Guys, that's such a fraud. That's the end of the article of Gateway Pundit. Well, my friends, that's all the time that we have for today. I want to leave you with the Rubin Report. Now, if you have not seen the Rubin Report, you really ought to. Guys, roll that tape.
Anyway, let's go to some video here because this is just incredible, folks. Biden, announced the winner by the media. Again, it's not certified. Okay, that's fine. And then it's just incredible because remember when Trump was having all of these events, because Biden didn't really have any events or campaign or anything, still got 73 million votes. Incredible. But when Trump was having all these events, these were super spreader events. And, nobody's wearing masks and they're packing all these people in and they're not social distancing and COVID's going to kill all of us. Well, let's look at some video of the last couple days, what the people who have been telling us to stay locked down and not do anything and the world's coming to an end. Let's take a look at what they're up to now.
Listen, you follow. If you're not born again, you're not going to.
Well, there you've got it, guys. We've solved COVID, social distancing not necessary anymore. You don't necessarily have to wear masks anymore. You can win an election and then also burn down effigies of the guy that you just defeated. I saw a lot of tweets, something like this. We've gotten rid of the dictator through elections. Yeah, there's just so much hypocrisy all over the place. And these people have been doing this relentlessly. And the mainstream media, of course, refuses to call them out, and they'll never call them out. We know that when there were Black Lives Matter rallies with thousands of people, the media wouldn't say that had anything to do with spreading COVID. But if Trump had rallies, it was all about that and the rest of it. I also want to talk a little bit about some of the hypocrisy related to accept the results and we have to unify now, because we're hearing a lot about this, that we have to accept the results. Now, I already talked about that at some level. It's like the same people who didn't accept the results for 4 years are now telling us to accept the results.
Yeah, one more thing. Sorry, I thought I was going to leave you with that. I'm not. We are not accepting this fraud from Biden. And that's exactly what it is, guys. It's a fraud. We win and they lose. I'm Joseph Hurley, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.